Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 787. Today we're going to take a look at Last Light. This is a game that came out, I believe, last year from Gray Fox Games and designer Roy Canaday. And this is his first design game. I'm a little late to the party here. I think it was on some of the best of lists for last year, and didn't get a chance to play it, didn't get a chance to try it until recently. It is a 2, 3, or 4 player SpaceX 4X type of game, although it plays much quicker than your average 4X space exploration combat game. And you can get to, I think, 8 players with an expansion. But the base box, which is what I'm reviewing here, is a 2 to 4 player game. What you see here is the retail edition of the game. So, if you see this in the store, this is what you're going to get. And so let's go down to the table. I'll show you briefly how it works, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, here you can see the main board set up as it would be for a 3-player game. Now, this bottom piece of the board here is not double-sided, but you can see there's kind of 2 components in here. This one rotates and then the center one rotates. These are double-sided, so depending on the player count, you'll flip those to a certain side. And then you will align the players' bases or their motherships. Here you can see the purple player there with their little extractor miner thing here. And then also one of their small ships there. Right here, and then you can see a yellow mothership and a red mothership. So depending on, again, on the player count, you'll set up slightly differently. And the rulebook has a very nice illustration. You'll have these different colored planets out there. You can see the color on the actual globe is not the important part. With the color you see here, so this is basically a blue and yellow planet. And you also put these little hidden discovery tokens on there. And there's 2 different colors of those. So you can see that's a blue one there. And then there's red ones kind of towards the middle, which have, cooler powers and discoveries. And then you have these kind of like deep space tokens, which you'll put face down, which will have different rewards for exploring in them. And the objective of the game is, as the title of the game describes, is Last Light. So you're trying to collect light, which is basically victory points, and you use those with these little crystal things. There's little ones that count as 1 light, and these big ones here, they count as 5 light. So you're going to get light mostly by colonizing, or rather controlling, the planets here kind of in these central rings, or also just having ships around this central globe there, which is not a planet. It is a white dwarf star, probably the last white dwarf in the whole universe, according to the rule book. So the universe is swiftly approaching heat death, depending on your theory of the end of the universe. But either way, the universe as you know it is going to end. And so yeah, you're just trying to be kind of the last civilization to collect light. And so we'll explain a little bit about how the game works here. So the main driver of the mechanics of the game are these 6 action cards. And each player has these. And each turn you just play one simultaneously. Everybody has it face down, and then you reveal it. Mostly you can do these simultaneously. You can do them in any order you want. It doesn't usually matter. The one where it matters the most is this number 6 one, is the command card. And with this one, you're going to move ships around and also attack. So you can see we start with this little ship. We may get our big old cruisers there. This is the big old purple ship. And you have these little medium ones here, like that. And so then any that you've built from previous cards, previous actions, and you kind of move around and attack. So in this case, you're going to do the command action in turn order. So there is like a start first player marker there, which will rotate. Otherwise, you just perform these in ascending order here. So if I played, a research card, and then Billy played a trade card, I would do mine first, and he would do his. But typically, you can just do them all at the same time. And a couple other things here. Everybody gets a nice player aid here, and these are just icons that you'll see mostly on these exploration and discovery tokens here, just to kind of see what the reward actually is. It's very handy. And at the start of the game, you can see there's a whole mess of these different alien races, and these are just different powers. So you deal out 2 of these to each player, and then they'll choose one and put the other one away, and they'll give you a different little power. And these are really cool. They have just tons of different abilities that kind of just enhance and modify the game. And the other thing that you will have, that each player will have, in addition to their ships and their alien race and their player board, which I'll show you, is each player will choose one of 4 little endgame or mid-game, even bonus cards. So when you sort of control certain colored planets, based on the colors on their little bases there. Then you can flip that open, and then you can get some light and some victory points that way. Just gives you kind of a bonus thing. You can always take kind of an assessment of the board, look where the colors are distributed. Certain colors are more rare than others in terms of, you know, how many of those types of planets you have to control, but you usually get more points for less on those, where the other ones you get more points for having more and stuff. So it kind of balances out that way. So let's just go quickly through the action cards here, then we get a sense of how you score. So we'll start here with number 1. This is research, and this is to get different technologies. So here we can see our player board, and here is a giant stack of technology cards. Now you'll start with one of these in your hand, sort of undeveloped technology, and then when you take the research action, you're going to draw 3 of these, keep 1, and then discard the other 2. So you start to build up a hand of these technologies, and then you can spend resources to basically build any of these technologies. And the resources are here in the middle, so you can see you have a common resource and a rare resource. And there's just 3 different types of resources. You got gray for common, purple uncommon, and then this gold one here for rare. And so you can just pay the cost of any that you can afford in your hand, and you'll put these out here. Now there's 3 sort of types of resources here. You have ship abilities, which will go on this part here. So I might have maybe an ability here. This will be for my small ships here. So you can kind of, when you set your player area up, you can kind of set the ships down under here. And this one would be for my medium ships. And then I could do another one here, maybe for my large ships there. And so you can see how that works. But then you can also get a ship mod. And the mods here will go under like this. And so you can put that. And so now my small ship here has this ability with this modification. And so this gives us extra movement. This will roll or generate different abilities based on dice rolls in the combat and so on. Now the other type of technology you have are these developments here. And there we go. If it'll focus there. So this one you just put off to the side, and you can have as many of these as you want, as long as they're all different names. And these will just generate for you different effects that'll globally affect your civilization. Now the one thing to note here, when you do research, at the beginning of your research action, if you have 4 technologies out there that you've developed, you get a light. And if you had 8, you would get 2 lights. So for every 4 that you get out here, you would generate some victory points. And if you wanted to replace this ability, you could play a new ability. This one would get discarded, and then you would switch out your ship ability. So that's the research action. The mining action here is simply, you're just going to mine resources where you have these extractors. Now you start with 1 extractor on your little mothership here, and you can see on your motherships you can generate up to 2 common resources and 1 uncommon. So we put that in there. At the start of the game, you can start, if you play the mine card, just generate a common resource. Now as you sort of go out here and explore, let's say, and we'll start to uncover these little things here, then you will start to see what you can possibly mine there from that. So when you explore these, you'll get the gray reward based on the icon immediately when you move in and discover that, and then you'll leave this here. And so this shows you that when you take the mine action, if you've got an extractor here, which you would have possibly built on a previous turn, then you will get, in this case, a uncommon resource. So anywhere that you have extractors, you're going to pull that resource when you play the mine action. Now, speaking of building extractors and spaceships, the number 3 action here is construct. So here you can build as many ships as you can pay for, and you can kind of see here what the cost is. So you can see the small ships are common, medium ships are common, uncommon, and you've got the gold for the big ships. So you can build them, and they also tell you like what their range on attack is, how many dice they roll. So in this case we roll 1 dice, 2 dice, how many hit points they have, so 1, 2, and 3, and then how far they can move, which is 1 space. Now the big ones here have the ability to destroy extractors. That's what that little sort of bomb icon equals there. So you can build as many ships as you can pay for, and then you can build 1 extractor for free. And you have to have presence in that zone where you're going to build the extractor, and it can't be contested, you know, with other ships and stuff. So anyway, that is the construct. So next one would be to do trade here. This is a very interesting one. So when you do this, you basically pick 2 of these actions displayed here. So you either get a common, trade 2 common for uncommon, trade 2 uncommon for a rare, trade 2 rare for a light or a victory point. So you pick 2 of these, and you can do the same one. So I could just get 2 common or trade 4 rares for 2 victory points. But then you choose one opponent to gain a common. So even if they didn't do the trade this round, then somebody's going to be getting that. And that's kind of simulating, you know, interpersonal player-to-player trades there. So very simple there. And then we have here the refresh. So one thing I have not yet mentioned is when you play these cards, you're going to play them in front of you, and they are used up until you play your refresh card. And when you play your refresh, you're going to pick up all the cards that you've played, and then they can go back into your hand. The refresh will stay down there. The refresh doesn't come up until everybody's played their refresh cards. Once that happens, and everybody has a refresh card on the table at the same time, we'll do a little scoring, and then everybody will pick up just their refresh cards. So what happens here is, so when you refresh, you will unexhaust all of your cards. So you might have some technologies that say to exhaust them, so you just flip them over to use them, or you might have an alien ability that says to exhaust, so you flip those over. So you'll unexhaust all of those. All your ships will heal, because if you do some damage but not enough to destroy them, you'll put these little damage markers on there, so they'll all heal when you do a refresh. And most importantly probably is you're going to, where you have your uncontested extractors there, you're going to get 1 light per outer planet and 2 per inner planet. So that simply means these 2 rings. You get your kind of outer ring, you control these planets. For each one you control, you get a light. For each one of these in the middle here, again not including the star, you get 2 light per those when you play the refresh card. And then the other thing to keep in mind is when everybody has played their refresh card, then you will actually also score any ships that are right here next to the star. They're just kind of sucking the light out directly there. So everybody's going to score for any ship that they have once that final refresh card is played. And then again, everybody will pick up their refresh cards. And finally, you have the command, which I said everybody can move. Most ships move 1, but sometimes you'll get abilities and stuff that allow it to move more than 1. And then you can attack with each of your ships. So let's set up just a brief scenario here. So in this case, let's look at 2 examples. One, if the purple played a command card, then they maybe would have been able to move a ship into here and then attack, and then yellow would just have to sit there and take it, and vice versa. If yellow had played, maybe they moved in here and then they could attack. If they both played a command that turn, then the player again in turn order would do their moving first, and then the other player would move, and then you kind of attack simultaneously. And again, you roll dice based on the ship, so small 1 dice, medium 2 dice, large 3 dice, and then unless you have modifiers. And then you see here you've got hits right here, where you can see there you've got exploding hits there with that little sort of circle C there. Sometimes you will have special abilities that you've equipped your ship with, and when you roll that, then that ship will execute special abilities, and then you kind of just apply the damage there, and the ships, as they get damaged, they'll get destroyed. And again, the big ones or anything else that might have an ability that has, again, this bomb icon, which I'll just show you again there, if there are no other ships there, then they can apply hits to these extractors. They'll have 1 hit point and destroy those. So that's the command action. So that's pretty much the game there. The one thing that I didn't mention during the refresh part, which I should have, but I'm going to do it now because it's super important, is that you're going to rotate these rings here. So you're going to rotate this middle one basically 90 degrees. So you can see that kind of lines up with these little circles there. So that goes 90. This one goes 45. And then you can see everything is kind of relatively the same in terms of how close you are to the middle, but as you get further away, the kind of gravity and distortion of how things are, you know, in proximity to you or not changes. So you might be, you know, kind of flooding in ships here and having some little bit of area control here, but they're going to kind of slowly get pulled away from you, and you're going to have your opponents get kind of pulled towards you in that way. So it has a kind of interesting sort of balancing act, as well as being thematic about, you know, kind of turtling versus not turtling and that kind of stuff. So it's a real interesting gameplay implication there. But anyway, that will happen, you know, every time the last refresh card is played and you do the scoring there. And again, once somebody hits 20 victory points or 20 light, they immediately win the game. And then that's it. Okay, so that is Last Light. Let's go into my 3 pillars of review. First, we'll just talk about play time. The box is 60 minutes. I would say that's exactly about right, probably even less. Getting into player count, I played it 2 and 3 player. Haven't played it 4 player yet. A 2-player game definitely can go quicker than an hour, like no problem. Our 3-player game, I think it went about an hour. And 4-player game I haven't played, but I wouldn't expect it actually to go much longer than that because, again, it's a simultaneous play. And, you know, especially as people kind of get the hang of it, it's the game loop, the mechanics is it's very simple, it's straightforward. So kind of the interactions and the strategies where people kind of have to get the hang of things. And so, but you're not looking at more than an hour and a half tops, you know, with 4 brand new players. And that will come down as people get experience with it. Now, in terms of play count and what I kind of prefer, I think I prefer 3-player, and I would imagine I would like 4-player just as much as 3. But I will say the 2-player game is actually pretty interesting. So what happens is you have a kind of a third color of ships that are kind of like a neutral faction in a way, but they will ally to whoever has the least amount of light, the least amount of victory points. And so they will, you know, act as your ships to help you sort of attack and take over territory and stuff like that. Now, none of your special abilities and mods to the ship will affect that. They'll just have kind of their basic stats, but they can help you. So it's pretty interesting how you can sort of try to time the control of that, because, you know, if you make use of them and then you shoot ahead, then the other player immediately gets the ship. You know, once you kind of resolve the action that's happening, then that player gets the ships from you, which could be where you're at. So it's kind of cool that way, how that works. And that becomes like kind of a game within the game. And I really like that. I thought it was a very smart, elegant way to kind of handle this style of game and a 2-player game. And I will say something about the 3-player count, which I really, really enjoyed as well, is a lot of times with these kind of area control, you're trying to attack other players, that kind of thing. That can be a problem in a lot of 3-player games because you kind of have like 2 players beating up on each other, or, you know, 2 players picking on 1 player and that kind of stuff. That can just kind of naturally happen. That is, I don't know if it's impossible to do in this game, but I think it's pretty hard because a couple of things. Mostly the board, and this will kind of move into my last pillar, which is like, what is this game like? That moving central board, that just kind of shakes things up more than anything, really, honestly, that I've seen in this game. There's a lot of other cool elements to the game, but that rotating board just, you know, it just makes it so it's hard. And I think this is a great thing about the game, to like just build a fortification around stuff so nobody can penetrate, you know, your front lines. That's thrown out the window because, first of all, it's space, you know, so it's more than 3-dimensional in a way. That z-axis is just as important as the x or y. There is no x, y, or z-axis really in space. And so just the simplicity of that rotating board really sort of brings that to light, and it makes it really cool. And things just kind of get, you know, kind of warped around. And I assume, like, you know, kind of the bending of space and the bending of gravity and space-time and all that, it kind of plays into that too. But just speaking from a purely like abstract, like positional flanking kind of idea, it emulates space really well in that. Because, you know, in a lot of space games, I never really thought about this. If you take, like, I don't know, Twilight Imperium or whatever space game you want to talk about, it's like, oh, this person is adjacent to this person. Yeah, but I'm like this infinite space going up. You know, so they don't really, like, you're not really adjacent to me. I mean, you can be close to me, but I got plenty of room to maneuver here. So anyway, that's just a really cool part of the game, and I really get a kick out of that. And then again, kind of with like the gravity well sort of idea there, that makes it really cool, makes it really thematic. And it kind of is interesting because it's, the theme of the game is, you know, the last light in the universe. So you have this last white dwarf, and it has some kind of energy that you're trying to get out of it, right? And because that board moves, it's like Mother Nature or whatever trying to work against you, you know, because it's like it's moving your stuff. You're like, I don't want to move my stuff over there, but it's going to move it anyway. So you got to think about that. And so you're in this last like little corner of creation, right? And you kind of at the whim of all the gravitational forces and all these things that are in play. So that kind of like ends to it's almost like a creepiness, to the theme and the desperation of like, we're just trying to extract, that last few minutes of life before the thing blinks out and it doesn't matter anymore. That's kind of cool. And having these different cool little funky alien races and stuff is pretty neat, because it's like all these different civilizations sort of clawing at this last edge of the universe. All that stuff just works really, really neat. And the simultaneity of the gameplay, kind of the elegance, all those kind of buzzwords that people like to use, the efficiency of what the game does with its pieces and all that stuff is really, really cool. Now, I will say at the end of the day, with how that works, like it seems, well, to me, but I can see on surface, and this is kind of was my impression going in, was like maybe it's like a little too simple. Kind of get that vibe a little bit from it, but I don't think so, because there is a interesting, it's almost like a yo-yo kind of thing. And you see this in a lot of games. So I use kind of the analogy of Dominion or something, where you're buying cards to kind of get your engine going. And then you make the switch and then you're buying points. This is a similar kind of vibe there, where although it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more to it, I think, in this game than in most games of Dominion. Not trying to bash Dominion, but I'm just saying there's like, the spatial element and what your opponents are doing, and, which planets have which resources, which color of the planets, all these other kind of things in play. But you have to not ignore the technologies. You have to also not ignore getting out and getting some claim on some space, so that when points and scoring rounds do happen, you get something out of them. So there's an interesting balancing act and kind of tug of war between getting your little engine going and then making it run for a round or two. And the game is so compact that feels very satisfying in a way, because it's like nothing is laborious. It's like, I'm getting this going, this is too hard. So it's not like anything it doesn't feel like punishingly difficult to do, but there is still that balancing act that you have to try to thread the needle on to balance upgrading, building a bunch of ships, and then getting the technology for those ships and the resources there, and how, what do you spend it on? And then as far as like moving out and getting to places so you can start to suck light out of the universe here. So that's really cool. And again, it bakes in at 45 minutes to maybe a little over an hour. And so, so you got, is it a 4X game? Well, you've got the exterminate, you got the shooting down of ships, you got the exploit, your mining stuff, exploit, exterminate, I want to say extract, because there's extractors, explore, whatever. The only thing that is maybe not there is the explore, because you see everything on the board, the fog of war is not really there, but you don't see what some of those hidden bonus tokens are, so that kind of triggers the exploration side of it. A lot of times in these 4X games, people want to cram in, and I think this was smart. I don't know if this was like 100% intentional or just because, the design was just clean enough from the beginning, but you don't have any like voting and politics and all these other things that people want to like cram into a 4X game, which sometimes works really well, but other times it's like, well, you don't need to add Game of Thrones into, trying to extract light from a star. So anyway, I kind of appreciate that it pairs, it gets rid of anything extraneous. It doesn't feel like there's anything wasted here. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a meaning. Everything feels like important to do. And it's not one of those where it's like, oh, it's simultaneous, so it's just people just playing blah, blah, blah. Like people are thinking about what they're doing, right? And so, yeah, maybe I got my few turns planned out and I'm like, okay, this one, my turn's quick. My next turn's quick. My next turn's quick. But then there's going to come that turn where it's like things have changed a little bit, and then somebody's going to take an extra 30 seconds to a minute or something like that to really kind of think about how things are going to work, and that those timing aspects are very important. So I mentioned in the 2-player game, you got the timing aspects of, when to kind of like try to swing control of the ships and that kind of thing. That still happens here with the refresh card, and trying to figure out when to kind of do that and set things up so that when I do play my refresh card, I'm going to get more points than if I had done it a turn earlier or waited too long. and maybe not got as many points because somebody came and took a planet or two from me. So that timing aspect is really kind of a key thing that it kind of revolves around there. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I think it's really fun. I'd like to try this with like some of my extended family and stuff like that, because I think it feels like it's probably doable for people that don't play games all the time, and that's who I've played this with. So we all had fun with it, but I really think this could be one of those things that also kind of straddles, the gamer personality a little bit, because it has. There's still dice rolling, there's still like drawing technology cards, but it doesn't feel like messy or chaotic like sometimes, what you might think of a typical Ameritrash game has. It feels very, to the point and efficient, and it feels like, every decision you make is not just totally taken out of your hands like sometimes those style of games can do. So I think this could thread the needle for lots of various, different tastes and stuff like that. So anyway, that is Last Light. Definitely take a look at it. Thanks.